Here we go. Transfer the movie. So now let's move on to the next layer, okay? So we see the actually I'm gonna get the intermediate brush number 4. I could do it with this, but I need to make my life easier. So so now let's see what color we have in here. This is somehow easier to do because so we have in some areas lighter yellow, and I could take care of that and show you how to do it. I could take care of that by simply lifting with just water, clear water here, a little bit of that paint. You might not be able to see it because maybe the resolution is not bad. It's not that great. But if I do this, I keep rubbing the area that I want to lift with clear water, I will dissolve a little bit, and I see a little bit of difference in here. You might not be able to see it, but this is something you could do if you see that your values overall in this area here, which is the light is coming from here, are too dark, and you want to lift them a little bit, right? So, and you go over it 2-3 times until you lift it as much as you need. Another to do this, you could also use a synthetic brush because it's stiffer and it kind of lifts more paint because it's more abrasive. So there is a little bit of difference here, not much. But because it depends also on the inherent properties of the color, and sometimes the color is staining, like in this case. And when the color is staining, they will get into the paper very, very finely ground. They will not get out that easily. You could lift it, but it would take quite some time. Now I lifted some here. I see it. I don't know if you're able to see it. So now let's move on to the next level. And I see that I go for the next slightly darker color, which is maybe this one here. It kind of a reddish brown. So that was yellow ochre. That is a reddish brown, right? Let me see if you can see the difference, right? You see this kind of, we went for this color here, and now we're going to go for that color there, right? So I need now to mix. I can start with the base of yellow ochre that I had, right? And mix a little bit more of red in there. But it gets orangey. So I could get a little bit of blue in that orange color because orange and blue are complementary, remember? So if I want to lower the chroma of the orange color and make it more like a brown, I'm going to put the complementary. See how I obtain now like almost like a brick red, but that is definitely a brown red more than an orange color, right? So it's a little bit on the cool side. I see a little bit of violet in there, so it could be okay because my original drawing has some violet. See some violet qualities in there, right? So I could use that, or if I want to warm up the violet, I'm going to use a different red, right? I'm going to use a warm red and see what that definitely warms it up. See, that warms up the red, and now it's from, let's say, an Indian red, which tend to be cooler. I'm going to have more like a English red or a brick red, like a see that? Well, that's enough. It's too much. Sorry. It's a little bit more. There you go. It's a little bit more on the on the cool side. Okay, so now let's add a little bit more again, and we're gonna go back to that reddish brown, right? I'm trying to find a balance between cool and warm in here, right? Okay, so let's see if it looks good now on the paper, right? And I put it here, and it's kind of a violetish, and if that's even a word. So I could warm it up a little bit, right? So let's put in some more of this warm red, right? A little bit at a time, not too much, right? And then that should have warmed up my red earth. And let's see what happens. Yeah, that's definitely a little bit better, right? So let's start with this now. So what we do, we're going to layer so the light is coming from here, so this side in here is going to have a darker side because the pine cone are oriented like this, right? So this side in here will be lighter, this side in here will be darker. So let's start with the central area, right? And I can do is block in this forming here, wherever there's the shadow mass. See there, you see the shadow mass here, right? Sorry. You see this area here is all shadow, right? So I could block in here, follow the shadow. This is going to be a cooler color. I'm going to show you later about the cooler color, right? So this is going to be my shadow right here, and I can block in all this division between the red and the yellow ochre, keeping in mind that there are going to be some areas later on that I can darken even further, right? So all that is going to be on the darkest side, so it's going to be a cooler violet color. But for now, I need to show a passage from light mass and shadow mass, and I could even lift it a little bit, see that if it gets too dark, right? And notice how it's not a flat, the pine cone is not smooth, but it has all these little lines that are typical of the surface of the pine cone. So I could go after those now, right? So here goes my shadow. After those, and then get the little irregularities, little bumpy surface of the pine cone here, like this, right? So a little bit more here, right? Each one of these irregularities, then it could be even further refined by having it become darker and darker and darker as I move toward the end. In which case, what I want to do, I want to darken some of my red, right? Make it darker, and eventually see, maybe I need a little bit of green now, right? And create a gradation, right? So I'm gonna make some green quickly to mix with the red, so it's complementary, to darken that red. See, that darken that red, lower the chroma of that red. So now at this point in here, I could get in here with this lower part, see that, get it a little bit darker, the tip maybe here a little bit darker, right? So I could add a little bit more details as I work on this, right? And those details will give me more and more description of my subject, right? with all the scales, and so on. So now, at this point in here, we could also do change. See how gradually I turn away from the light, and this part in here will be somehow darker, right? Less bright. The core shadow here, the passage from one plane to another plane, tend to have a darker accent in the center, right? So I can respect that. Every time you see a scale over a scale, you know there's going to be shadow, right? So we're going to darken that a little bit more. And then at this point, I want to actually let me work on this a little bit longer, right? A little bit longer. This guy with a pickup truck, I don't know if you can hear him. He's a maniac. He's just dangerous. Anyway, that's all he got, right? Pickup truck. So you hear him, man. I guess he's a kid. You know, kids tend to be like that. But see him zooming around with a tank. Basically, is just kind of scary. Anyway, so sorry, guys. Sorry. So now, you see how gradually I build up my surface, the planes, the details of the pine cone in here like this. As I get, see that, this part in here, right? So as I get more and more into the structural description of the form, right? So now, all of this part in here, on the left in here, is in the shadow mass. So I want to push it down, push it away, even a little bit more, by not just making it darker, right? So I want to also use color to kind of give a sense that this form in here is moving away from me, right? So what I can do, I can get a violet color, right? So maybe I don't want to clean it up because I might need this. So let's make a violet color, a little bit more pure, in a separate batch here, right? Because I want this violet to be cleaner, right? So I have a violet here with two cool colors, and what I can do, I can take some color from this mixing here, and then mix it here to still maintain a core of the original color here, so it's not too different. But more clearly violet, but not too violet. I don't know. It's a fine balance, right? It's really a tricky balance. So in here, I see how this part here in the shadow here is darker, bluer, more violet. I mean, I'm moving away from warm colors and getting more into cool colors, like in this case the bluish violet color here. And I can block in now also the underside of the pine cones. So if I paint over the previous layer, which is now dry, I mean, I'm doing this on a dry layer, right? Because if I paint this on a wet layer, those colors will mix in a different way. So these are not mixed. These are layers of color, right? So I have a layer of yellow, dries, a layer of red, dries, a layer of blue or violet. And what I do, it's like gelatin filters, right? So the color they obtain is in an indirect painting. But meaning the light goes through them and bounces back, picks up, mixes optically these colors. But if I mix the color like I'm doing now, that's not going to be an optical mix. that's going to be a molecular mix. All the molecules of the color mixed together create a different color, right? So the color that I put here, that I achieve here, is the result of 3 layers of color that are optically mixed. So now, just to give you an idea, if this color here is now, so the color they put here now is the violet that I have mixed separately. And let me show you the difference. See that? How this violet in here now, because it's not going over the previous colors, is really different chromatically. It's violet. See that? Darker violet. And with that, what it could achieve is an enhanced sense of depth. It moves away from these colors here, because these colors are reddish warm, and they tend to move toward me. Those colors being cooler, and of course low chroma, they kind of recede a little bit. So at this point, what I could also do, I could start with blocking in a shadow in these areas in here, in the most distant areas here, that are on the violet side of the spectrum here, see that? And that will recede. So now I look at that violet there, and it's sticking out too much. So what I do, I take a little bit of the previous color that I used to color all these other colors, and then I put it there, and then, because it's still wet, it kind of spreads out. And the fact that it spreads out, in this case I'm painting wet on wet, is good for me, because it will kind of create a softer feel, right? And I want a softer feel in the washes that are far away, removed from me. So now just a question of being patient and getting in here more and more gradually, gradually, more and more layers of washes, right? In this case, they're going to be optical washes to create the sense of detail. Now it's all about the detail, right? So you see how at this point I could also, I mean, I'm going darker and darker in defining more and more details. See that? And in here, up in there, is where I'm going to have the darkest value. So I could block in here with, put down in here with a darker violet, violet with a touch of brown, the really deeper area here, and in this case I put it when the previous day was still slightly damp, so that we can spread gradually, the color spreads gradually, and the edges are not super hard, right? So basically, see how I'm carving out the single outline of each scale, right? And eventually, with patience, you will achieve this level of detail, all right? So try to do this now. Pinecone is tricky, but it's a good way of studying the structure of things, the structure of the natural organism, be it a tree, a pinecone, a fish, etc., because they don't smell like fish would. You know, you need to copy a fish, you gotta use a different strategy, and I'm going to show you how to do it later on. A tree is gonna be big, so you're gonna go outside. You can kind of use photographs. So this is an example of microcosm, right? So we're seeing last week the macrocosm with the landscape. This is an example of a microcosm that is really handy. It's easy to copy a small object like this, full of details. It's a miniature macrocosm, if that's even such a thing. But it permits you to really control the various layerings gradually, because without worrying too much about too many colors, because it's fairly monochromatic. So it's a in between a tonal study and a value study. Like tone refers to the colors, and value refers to black and white. So in this case, yeah, how dark is that color? How light is this color? And because it's monochromatic, it's again not really black and white. You can still managing with color, but much fewer color. So it's a very good way of understanding how dark is that color and how light is that color, because you don't have a lot of color variations. So please practice with the pine cone, and let me give you a little more detail on this, right? And I'm really looking forward to see what you are doing. So what your works. This one also is different, slightly different color. See that? So you should be able to find pine cones now around. Take a walk in a park, right? And then copy it from life. Try to copy it from life, following the steps that I showed you earlier on.